Mandy has a passion for technology ever since her first robotics course in high school. Since then, she has fallen in love with coding and has completed her bachelors in computer science. She worked as a front-end developer at Intuit and a back-end developer at Dotdash Meredith. She has been able to speak at a variety of conferences and events, like the Canadian Celebration of Women in Computing and Association for the Advancement of Artificial Intelligence. She will share with you today how to write the perfect resume. Please welcome Mandy Meindersma.
Give me a couple seconds. Okay, here we go. Okay, so thank you for that wonderful introduction. So yeah, a little bit about me, most of which was already said. I mentioned that I have worked at these companies previously because I also am currently unemployed because I got very burnt out at my last position and I quit, mostly because for mental health reasons. And I mostly want to call that out just because I feel like we're here tonight seeing how many wonderful things that women do, and I just want to normalize burnout a little bit because it happens and it's okay to take time off, or at least I'm trying to normalize it for myself, maybe. Basically the theme of this is helping you dare to be, or better maybe is helping you dare to brag about yourself. That's mostly what I'm going to talk about, is like different ways that you can brag about yourself in your resume. So basically I'm going to talk about how to make a tech resume, and this presentation is very much like geared towards developers. So if you are like wanting to be a PM or like a graphic designer or something like that, some of these tips may apply, some of them may not, so just FYI. And at the end I will have like a resources section because I might go through things a little quickly just in case it doesn't apply to everyone. There will be a a resources thing at the end you can take a photo of. So basically I'm going to go through a couple different types of resumes, the parsers and how they're the bane of my existence. And as someone who's unemployed and applying for all these jobs, this might just be a rant, a 15-minute rant of all the things I have to deal with at the moment. Yes, and then so I'm also going to talk a little bit about like your online resume, like LinkedIn. Can I have a hands up of who has a GitHub account? Yeah, okay, yes, okay, here we go. Yeah, and a little bit about networking tips as well. So, with that, there's like 3 types of resumes that I am familiar with and that I work a lot with. If you are from another industry or you have your like resume from high school, I don't know, a lot of them have like the objective or summary section. That I don't think is a thing as much in tech places as much. Normally that's your cover letter now. Your tech resume is... The other thing I'm going to include is I'm going to include like a couple depressing facts of the day. I'll try to do it in a fun tone though. Your tech resume has to be 1 page and it has to be super concise. Recruiters take on average 7 seconds to look at your resume. Once it passes the 7 seconds, then yes, they do go onto these things. And just so you know, this presentation is kind of like a built-up of averages of like the big FANG companies as well as startups. Every company is different. There are a lot better companies out there that take a lot longer time to look at your resumes than just 7 seconds, but unfortunately. And then for anyone in grad school or wants to do grad school, that's more like your 7-page everything CV. I don't want to touch those because I didn't go to grad school and I don't really want to. Parsers, every company basically has a different parser, and they basically just test your resume. The goal is to remove bias, but like what was referenced in another presentation, sometimes they include more bias. So I really dislike them. But one thing I do want to mention is that 2-column resumes, usually parsers just suck with 2-column resumes just because when it reads it line by line, it doesn't understand what's going on. So avoid 2-column if possible. The other thing I wanted to talk about was like bias in your resume. A lot of people want to include like a profile photo, And I've always wanted to include my pronouns on my resume as well, because I want to work at a place that's inclusive of these things. But I've gotten advice given to me before that you shouldn't put anything on your resume that isn't directly related to the job, and you shouldn't have anything on your resume that might introduce bias. Your resume is going to be seen by recruiters, but also just developers that are interviewing you as well. And they might have biases that HR will try to rule out, but humans always have bias. So as much as I want to put my pronouns on my resume, I haven't at this moment in time, mostly because, again, the 7-second depressing fact, they only have so little time to go through it. So I only put things that are very relevant for the job. Also, the tailoring instance, like I said, this presentation is geared towards developers and probably new grads as well, or like people just going into the tech industry. You're probably going to have to make a new resume for every job you apply to. There was a study done by the U of A that said 92% of Edmonton companies reject applicants based on poor tailoring of the resume if it doesn't really match up with the job description. And it shows what you do amazingly, but it doesn't show how you in that position meld. Then it's not going to work out either. Couple of fun organization tips. If you are going to have your projects on your resume, make sure that you include a URL shortener, and make sure, again, that it can be parsed. Keep the fonts and the colors the same. Center aligning text is also the bane of my existence. It's never fun. A lot of people, when they're struggling to put as much information on their resume as they want, they just think like, ooh, I can make the font smaller. Let's make it size 8. Not usually. It doesn't work out that well. I would say 10 and below is usually a no-go. Try to stay above 11. The other thing I've noticed is that I usually use Microsoft Word and Google for my resume templates because they give great templates. And they can also be read by parsers very easily. Canva, I find, kind of sucks at that. They've been getting better over the years, but just something to test if you do like to use a Canva template, because they are beautiful. Couple sections, especially for tech. You always have your header first. If you're a new grad, usually education comes first. If you have been in the industry for a couple years, experience comes first. And then your skills, which is like a fun, controversial thing in the recruiting industry, which I'll go into later. And then your projects, and if you do any type of volunteer stuff. This is an example of a really good heading. Just a couple things like, you know, no address usually, unless you're looking like for a visa. I'm currently looking for a visa, and it makes everything harder because I want to move. Oh, also, I want to shout out Ella because I am currently 27 and I've quit my job with no plan and no prospects, and I'm deciding to move to a new country. So, you know, I'm just doing it at 27 instead of 21, so we'll see what happens. Yes, and for those of you that have your GitHub account, make sure you include it on there, but remember that recruiters actually look at it, so make sure you actually have work on it. And it's always good to include a personal website because that's an easy first project as well. With your education, you know, the important things are on there. Make sure you put your expected graduation date. And for any of you that are in your courses, if you say like compute 174, compute 200, you know, I don't know what that means, especially if I don't know where you went. So make sure that you're putting the title of the course. That's one mistake I see frequently. GPA is such a controversial thing as well. I've heard things like only put it on your resume if it's above a 3.3, if it's above a 3.7. I've never put my GPA on a resume. It seemed to work out fine. So usually they don't ask for it. So bullet points. This is the funnest part for me. I see a lot of women and non-binary people that they don't know how to brag about themselves. And myself is included in that. And that's one thing I want to practice a lot with all of my allies is like, I want to be good at bragging about myself. That's one thing I've been so happy with all the presenters this evening because they have been so good at bragging about themselves, and it's so nice to see. And I really want to see that in all of the bullet points in your resume. I want you to be proud of them. I want you to be excited about them. And then I want to make sure that you show just how strong you were in that position. So instead of saying like, I participated, I like helped here and there, I want to see like you designed, you led, like I want to see those strong bullet points. And I also want to see proof with quantifiable numbers. And I want to know what exactly you did, what you worked on, what you were proud of, and not necessarily what the project was about itself. A lot of people get tripped up in that as well. So that's your experience. Again, do like about 4 to 5 bullet points. Make sure you include like any impact you had on the company, any impact you had on like your learning, and something that you like, maybe it didn't have that big of an impact with numbers at the company, but it's something that you just learned. And then also with your position, if you have changed roles, recruiters usually really like to see that. If you started as a 1 and now you're a 2, include your promotion date. Again, brag a little. The controversial skills section. So the thing about skills section, it's just kind of where you list everything that you think you're proficient in. But some recruiters think that you don't have any proof if you just list it. Whereas with your bullet points, you can say, oh, you know, I helped 100 people when we introduced this feature. So a lot of them say maybe don't include a skills section. The one thing that I see quite often is like the bars. As a new grad, I was so excited to put the bars on my resume because I was like, ooh, I'm great at JavaScript and CSS. I'm gonna fill the bar out to 100%, which means that I'm an expert at JavaScript, which was not the case. I just really liked it. So it gives kind of like false readings. You want to make sure that like if you are putting that bar at 100%, that like, ooh, you could write JavaScript in your sleep, which some of us do because a lot of us dream about code, but you know what I mean. So try to, maybe don't include the skills section. Try to make sure that all your bullet points have what you mentioned if you would put in your skills section. And then the other thing is that a lot of us list soft skills in the skills section, which is not liked as much anymore because they would rather see a bullet point about like if you have strong communication skills, instead of saying strong communication skills, we want to see a bullet point about I worked with 6 people doing this thing that had a tight deadline. You have to have strong communication skills for that. And then also, most people don't really put Microsoft Office products or operating systems as much anymore, but mostly because those things are easier to learn on the job. And projects. Again, this is kind of just like experience all over again. Again, I want to know exactly what you did, not necessarily what the project was about. I want to know if it was like a group project. Again, this is where you can get those communication skills in. And another really important thing is that like anytime you go to a hackathon or like a conference or anything that might not just be like directly coding alone in your basement, put that in a project as well. They really care about seeing that you're going out, going to these events, things like this. And then volunteer. This one's exciting to me too because normally I would just put like volunteer and that's it. But as women and non-binary people, we do a lot of like glue work as well. Hands up if you've heard of the term glue work. Ooh, okay, cool. So glue work is the idea that if I'm hired as a software developer and a male is also hired as a software developer, a lot of the times I'm going to be doing a lot of glue work that keeps the team together. So I'm keeping the meeting notes, I'm planning the team events, I'm making sure that we function in ways that just isn't writing code. So women and non-binary people, we do that a lot. So to call out to that, instead of just saying like volunteering, we're trying to use those like stronger words, like it's leadership, it's devotion, there we go, devotion to diversity and inclusion, that kind of things, rather than just volunteering. So that's good. It also is quite uncommon, so put it on your resume, maybe it'll help you stand out, I'm not sure. The online resume, this is the fun part too. I've said that about every section, I think. So with LinkedIn, I love randomly connecting with people, but I like it even more if they tell me like where they know me from or like what they're interested in with my profile. I always like that little message of like, hi, I've stalked you, but this is why I stalked you. And then I have this wonderful photo from my friend. She's great at marketing because she has that little Let's Connect banner. It's such a creative idea, so you can always do that. Also, you can change your LinkedIn URL. I didn't realize this for the longest time, so do that. And then for those of you who have your GitHub, make sure your GitHub is actually active, again. And you can add readmes and descriptions and links to all of your projects. Make sure that everyone who's going through your GitHub has the easiest way to figure out what a project's actually about. And if you don't have a personal site, GitHub will also do the hosting for you for free. So that's a fun first project if you would like. Networking. This is my second depressing fact of my presentation. Randomly handing out my resume when I was a new grad, I kept an Excel sheet and I handed out and filled out about 200 applications, and I had a 0.05 success rate of offer. So as much advice I'm giving to you about your resume and doing things online, networking really helped me out there. I did a lot of networking when I was out of new grad, and that landed me with a 100% success rate. Every person that I talked to, I somehow got some sort of offer from some way or another. So it's a really good idea to chat and talk with people here. I know that's already been mentioned by our lovely hosts. So meet people here. Hands up if anyone's heard of the Edmonton Society. Ooh, okay, a couple of you, nice. The Edmonton Society was the place that I used to get all my networking. They have an opportunities channel in the Slack, and that is where I got all of my offers as a new grad. So go to the Edmonton Society. I have a link to their website at the end. Ella and I met at Canada Learning to Code, so go mentor at Canada Learning to Code, because I've also gotten a job opportunity from that, from knowing other people that mentor at Canada Learning to Code. And the speakers and sponsors that are here today, I've specifically worked with Tech Alberta and Edmonton Unlimited. I'm not saying all the other sponsors aren't great, I'm just saying those are the only two that I actually know. So work with them as well, they're really great. And resume roasting. It is so nerve-wracking to give your resume to a recruiter. It is much less nerve-wracking, it's still nerve-wracking, but it's much less nerve-wracking to give your resume to a friend. So in new grad, I gave my resume on the left to my wonderful friend Gary, and he said, what the expletive is this? And then within about 2 months, I had my resume on the right, and it was much better. So resume roasting is one of my favorite things. And I should maybe say resume review, because I promise I'm not roasting you. I promise I'm really nice when I do it. But it is something that needs to be done. And I find if you have that friend that can proofread it, everything just gets better. There are a couple places. So with the Edmonton Slack, I actually got in trouble for calling it resume roast. So it's now called resume review, which is a little bit nicer. So if you would like your resume reviewed and you would like someone else to do it, post it on there. There's also a Facebook group where you can kind of do more anonymously if you don't want everyone in the Edmonton to see it. So please post your resumes there if you would like them reviewed. I also have like a summary of any tips that I gave here if I went too fast or if anyone wants to like look over anything. And then I also have my LinkedIn if you want to connect. And yeah, feel free to take a photo, and it was lovely chatting with you all.